Yes, sir. The year was about 1971 or 72. I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and the church where my dad preached every year would have a meeting, a gospel meeting, revival sort of event. And every year we would go door knocking. And it seemed like we'd start about 3 months before the meeting, and we'd always have a goal of 10 or 20,000 doors we'd try to knock on. And it was every Saturday, every Sunday. And I have always been, and still am, scared to death of dogs. I just have a dread fear of them. So door knocking was not very popular in my life. So on this, every year they get together on Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, and they pair up and make assignments of who was going with who. And then I remember that Sunday that Dad said, "Son, today you're going with me." I knew what that meant. I knew that meant we'd go to every door, and I also knew we'd encounter a lot of dogs. We're in a rough part of town, and so we're out knocking doors, and we got up to this one house, and the fence was all broken down, and the house was in disrepair. The yard had not been cut, and it just kind of looked rough. And I thought nobody's living there. We got up to the front door, and when we got to the front door, the door was literally not on its hinges. It's sitting a little bit to the side, and I thought this is really good because no one lives here. There aren't any dogs here, so we can stay here as long as we want. So Dad kind of rapped on the side of where the door would have been, and nobody answered. We stood there a couple minutes later. He knocked on it again, and nobody answered. And after a while, we got ready and we left. We walked back down the sidewalk, back through where the picket fence had been, walking down the sidewalk to the next house. And I spotted these guys before Dad did, but I knew he would. A bunch of old guys working with motorcycles and a lean-to back behind the house. And I remember it so well. Dad saw them, and sure enough, walked back around the picket fence, walked through the rough, uncut grass to the back of the yard, and all these rough-looking guys, beer cans spread everywhere. And Dad walked up to the one that I'm to this day am convinced was the biggest of the group, and he said, "Hello, I'm Jerry Jenkins from the Woodline Church of Christ. We're out today inviting people to study the Bible with us. Would you like to study the Bible with us?" And I remember the guy looked at him and kind of looked cross at him. I thought, Jerry Jenkins, born January 15th, 1934, died. I think somebody's got to write the obituary because he's fixing to die. That's the beginning of the story.
Oh, nice. I can't wait to hear the rest later on. So tell us who you are, where you're from, and interesting fact.
I'm Dale Jenkins. I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee, and I work with the Jenkins Institute. Lived here in Spring Hill for about 17 years now. Worked with the Spring Meadows Church of Christ here for years and love the people there. But and an interesting fact, I don't know what would be interesting. I did appear on the Larry King Live show one time.
That is interesting, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. What happened there then? You got to tell us now. I can't just say it.
Well, so there was a guy that was involved in some nefarious activity. I don't know if most people in America will know the story of the John Benet Ramsey murder several years ago. This guy was living in Singapore and was accused of a crime, and he was going to be caned. And most of the time, the people who are caned don't live from it. Well, he confessed to that murder so that he could be extradited back to the United States. And I had known him and I had some dealings with him, and that's how I ended up on several, like CBS This Morning and several different shows like that during that time. So nothing great about the story, but it did. It did
Five
get,
minutes of fame there, or whatever. 10 minutes
yeah,
for
yeah,
this.
that long.
So, like on the show, we talk about how to share our faith bravely. So, do you have some strategies for us? Usually about three that can help people today and this week and their life share their faith.
So just a couple of things. Thank you for asking. I'm glad you're doing this. First of all, I like the bravely idea. The fact is, most of us get really nervous, even if we've shared our faith with a lot of people. We still get nervous. We sit down and talk to someone. But just a couple of things I found useful. Something that is disarming in most people's lives is prayer. And I always think that if I see someone, meet them in a restaurant or a waiter or waitress or someone I'm in a hospital waiting room or anywhere, you can ask them, especially if you can tell they look like they have some of their mind or struggling way, you can ask them if you can pray with them. And to me, that is a great, great way to break ice and open doors and disarm people. Because rarely when I've done that, I've had someone say, "No, I really don't like to pray." Most people appreciate prayer. And so I think one of the most easy ways for us to open a door to have an opportunity to talk to someone about Christ is simply by praying with them. That's the first thing.
That's good. Yeah, prayer, and I think, like you said, just it does disarm them, but it's not you're not asking them for anything. They want you, they expect you to like want something from them. You want some money or something, so that's good. Prayer, powerful.
Okay, second thing, what I have found is that if anyone asks you a question, if I'm a preacher, and so people like to ask us controversial questions about the Bible, and sometimes it's because of a misnomer about the Bible or about the faith, or misunderstanding about Scripture, or sometimes it's a misunderstanding about the church. And when that happens, what I like to do is I like to postpone the question, and I'm trying to be kind about it. I'd love to answer that question, but would you be willing to sit down with me and talk further about the Bible? And if that's the issue, then if whatever that issue is, we'll talk about it later. But we have a bigger issue at hand. I want to talk about the Scriptures, and so that is a second thing that I've found that's really, really, really been helpful.
Good. So number 2 is just if they're tough questions, keep going. And number 3, what do you got?
Well, the third thing I think is you've got to be present in people's lives. And I just think that there's not much more of a way to do that than to provide places and opportunities where you can be around people and see people. I'm a part of several different organizations, and I'm not in those organizations because I'm just crazy about the organization, but it provides me people to be around. And then when something's going on in their life, they see how I live my life. It provides open doors for me to have an opportunity to talk to them about the gospel. And so, I coached for years. We coached Little League ball. I coached baseball. Of all the sports that I've coached, baseball is my least favorite. But it's such a slow moving sport, and parents love it so much that they come to all the games, and it provides a lot of chance for you to interact with them and to be around people. And so anything, I was a part of a history society at one time, not because I do like history, but not because I want to be a part and had time to do it, but simply because it provided an opportunity. For years, I would go to the city council meetings in the town that I lived in, and I would go to them because it got me in front of those people and had an opportunity to get to know them. So find places where people are, where you can have opportunities to help them, or to be with them, or to interact with them, or to let them see how you live your life, so that when something comes up, it provides that open door.
That's good. Yeah. Now, do you let's say someone's wants to try this, they're like, hey, I could probably join a couple things. I could probably find something to be a part of. What's some things that you're doing? So you're there, you go to let's say the historical place, or a coach. What are you looking for? What are you thinking about? Because you're there to share the good news, right? To be a
Yeah.
light. So
Well,
what's some,
inevitably things are going to happen in people's lives. They're gonna have a baby. They're gonna buy a house. They're gonna get married. They're gonna go through divorce. They're gonna have the death of a parent. And if you're coaching their child in Little League baseball, I have this little boy named Josh. I think about Josh a lot. And Josh's uh, granddad died during the season, and I remember really, really well that when his dad was very upset about it. His dad was not a religious man, but the death of your father is a major event. Well, I don't think it was just incidental that I happened to be coaching Josh's baseball team at the time that his granddad died. I had put myself in that place, and now I've been praying for the Lord to put people in my path that I have a chance to teach, and it gave me a chance to sit down and talk with the man. So that sort of thing. And Josh's dad became a Christian, and has lived a life of faith for many, many years since. It's been over 30 years. It's been over 25 years, maybe 30 years ago that happened. So yeah, I think that's you look for open doors. I think anytime as a Christian, anytime someone asks me almost any question, it's a door that opens. How do I take that question then? And I'm sorry, but use that question to twist back into something that'll provide me an opportunity to talk to them about the Lord.
right, which is the most important? Like the greatest thing we can share is
Yes,
Jesus with the world. You know.
yes, sir.
Well, what do you have for, we have a couple things here. So there's prayer is one. People are talking about questions, and then also be present in people's lives. So making sure that you're doing things, especially those of you that work or do something where you encounter a lot of people in the public, or your people you work with. You're always around people there, whether you want to be or not. You're working, and there's a great opportunity for because you get a constant flow, and they usually people recognize you, and you build. Or for me, like if I go shopping at the store and I see the same person over and over again, so things like that are very useful. So just be praying that you can do that. So let's hear the end of that story. I'm ready.
So Dad asked him, would you, any reason you wouldn't study the Bible with us? We found people like to study the Bible. And the guy said, he looked at him a long time, and I thought, this is not ending well. He said, when I was a little boy, my mama used to read me the Bible. She's been gone a long time. I'll take your Bible correspondence course. And so he signed up for the Bible correspondence course, studied all the lessons, completed them all, and then asked Dad showed him a series of videos, the old Joel Miller videos, film strips in those days. And then after the film strips, Dad asked him, "Then reason I shouldn't baptize you into Christ for the forgiveness of your sins." And he was ready to be baptized. He was baptized. And he came to church the next Wednesday night, and he looked rough. I mean, he had a nasty looking greasy t-shirt on, and this is a long time ago, blue jeans, when blue jeans weren't really acceptable in those days. His hair was long. He just looked rough, and I think he scared most of us. And he came in the back door after the service began, came in a couple minutes late, and he kept coming. He'd come Sunday, every Sunday, Sunday nights, Wednesday. It was every service. And it seemed that he kept cleaning up more and more, cutting his hair more and more. Eventually he had a burr cut, and he'd keep moving closer to the front. And eventually he was almost on the very front row. And I remember the Wednesday night, I was sitting with a guy named Keith and a guy named Jeff and a guy named Timmy. The three of us were sitting on the front row. I remember sitting on the front row that Wednesday night. And I know where I was sitting because Mom and Dad had a rule: you can sit anywhere in the church building you want to, as long as it's in front of us. And they sat on the second row, so that's why I was on the front row. But I remember that Wednesday night that he didn't come. I mean, it was as conspicuous that he wasn't there as it was the first time he had been there, because he never missed. And the service started, and Brother Jonathan was up leading singing. And about halfway through the second song, the back door opened, and he walked in. And behind him was walking a guy that looked just like he did the first time he walked in the building. And I don't know, there were about 9 or 10 of those motorcycle guys that eventually came to Christ simply because of, being willing to study the Bible with someone. So that's the end of that story.
That's a great story, man. And to have the courage to, some people, you just knock and you leave. And he was gone, he looked in the back, and he didn't want to just take that as didn't pass that opportunity.
Yeah. That was kind of relentless like that. Church he preached at for years in Birmingham, Alabama, they would baptize about one person every 7 days for about 40 years. And they really were very evangelistic. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so do you have another story?
I did bring another one just in case you asked. So I was in 5th grade when I met Lynn. Lynn was this great young guy. We were good friends. We had a lot of the same interests. We became really close friends. And for years, I knew that Lynn was not a Christian. I needed to talk to him about the Lord, and just I would put it off and put it off. And so I kept trying to hint at ways to talk to him. And we finally talked. We studied a little bit, and nothing came of it. And every once in a while, I'd ask him about it, and ask him about Christ, about the gospel, about the church. And he would always kind of say, well, I'm young and I'm still learning. And he didn't say much. So on our senior trip, the last night of our senior trip, we were in Lebanon. We were just outside of Lebanon, Tennessee. That's not where most people take their senior trips these days, but that's where we went to the Nashville area, and from Birmingham. And I remember the last night, it was about 1 a.m, and in a hotel room, and somebody knocked on my door, and it was Lynn. And he said, could you baptize me? I'm ready to become a Christian. And I baptized Lynn that night. And his dad called me the next day and said, if I ever see you speaking to my son, I'll shoot you.
Oh.
We graduated, and I didn't see Lynn for probably 35 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we reconnected, and he has grown in his faith, and he's continued to love the Lord, and just a good man. But we, for years, had not seen each other. So that's another little story there.
That's a good one. Good one. Well, thanks so much for sharing these great stories and strategies. I'm glad you're on the show.
Yes, sir. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for what you're doing.
Well, yeah, and so we'll encourage you all who are listening that don't give up. Get out there, share about the good news, because the good news is all life's about. Like, people out there, they need to hear good news. They need to hear about Jesus, because they are they're looking for a reason to live. So we have that. We just got to be brave.
Yes,
Look
sir.
around.
Be brave. I keep a 3x5 card in my pocket most of the time. I don't have it in this shirt pocket today, with 3 names on it of people I'm praying about that are not Christians yet, that I want to come to Christ. And, then that card reminds me to look for open doors. And so just keep trying and finding the courage to, as you say, to be brave in this.
Well, I like that. So if you're listening, that's a good little strategy there. If you want to try that this week too, is just get a little card, write a couple names on there, keep that in your pocket. When you pull it out, pray for them. That's a good strategy.
We have time for one more quick story.
Sure, let's do it. Bonus.
Okay. I've done that for years, the little card in the pocket. And so one Sunday years ago, I was preaching. I gave everybody in the audience a card and had them write down 3 names. I have a son that was in 8th grade at the time. His junior year of high school, he called me one day after class. He said, "Dad, can you meet me at the church building? Denny, my friend, wants to be baptized." And then I heard him. He got real quiet. And after a while, I could tell he was weeping. He said, "He's my 3rd name on my card."
Oh.
And I thought, it took 3 years, but it's just, those look for those opportunities, those people you're praying for. So that's the 3rd story.
That's awesome. I love that. Then we can leave the show with that, which is, won't we cry with joy when someone we know or someone we've written down on our card becomes a Christian? That's awesome. I said, so get more opportunities like that. God bless you all.
You've been listening to Be Brave. The world right now is a crazy place, and sharing the love of God is the most important thing we can do right now. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit up gobebrave.org. Remember, the love of God is the most powerful force in the universe. Learn how to love like Jesus. See you next time.